Welcome to the Agency Uplift podcast, where we go past the highlight reel and dig into what actually builds a strong agency. Clear foundations, better decisions, and the courage to scale, but on purpose. I'm your host, Sean Lang, co-founder of Social Commerce Club and advisor to agency owners. And today I'm here with David Feinman, CEO of Viral Ideas. Now, top brands trust Viral Ideas to be their full-time video team without the headaches. David, thanks so much for coming on.
Sean, super grateful that you brought me on the podcast. It's going to be a fun episode.
Absolutely. So why don't you start us off by just telling the audience a bit about Viral Ideas?
So Viral was actually conceived about 10 years ago, and I started the business by accident. I had originally built a separate business really on the backside of video ads and videography. And after I had that, sold that business, I started working on Viral Ideas. And really, we just provide an outsourced creative team for clients where they can come in and work with us on a fractional basis to deliver their video assets. And we're super specialized and hyper targeted to the market of video editing.
Very, very cool. So how did it start out? You said that it was kind of accidental. Walk me through kind of the origin story. I always find that the process of like iteration and sort of finding your sweet spot is really, really interesting.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, like, it started entirely by accident. So I had sold a business and got a couple calls from folks that wanted me to do something similar to how I had grown my past business for them as a service. And I was still actually in college at the time, and I was like, all right, I'll do this as kind of like my internship or like my back, sort of like something that I can just make a couple extra beer bucks from. So started running video and marketing contracts for a few companies. And ultimately that led to the founding of the company. I was interviewing at Google. I never thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur again. It's super stressful and a super like pain-inducing experience. So I was like, I'm just going to go work for someone. And I got to like the third round interview with Google, and I said, I can't imagine my life working here. I was like looking at the person interviewing me, and like, this is supposed to be the best company to work for. And I was looking at the person, and I was like, I can't be here. I can't do this. Like, there's no way. There's no way I can make this happen. At the same time, I was still running this side thing. So I talked to the person that I was running it with. I was like, hey, do you want to like maybe set this up into a business? He said yes, and we went off to the races and started trying to find contracts to work on from there.
That's crazy. So you were deep into the interview process with Google. Now, what about that made you say, I can't do this. I don't want to do this? Was it like the lack of autonomy? Was it becoming, a small cog in a giant machine? Like what was it for you?
I think for me, it was the idea that someone wrote up a job description that defined my life. So, I was talking to the person that was interviewing me, and I was thinking about, is this the person that I want to become in 10 years? Right. And will working here get me to the person that I want to be in 10 years? And I asked myself those questions, and I'm really grateful to my former self for asking myself those questions. And the answer was no. The answer was, I don't want to be this person that I'm being interviewed by. And this doesn't get to me to where I want to be in 10 years, to have a life of freedom, a life of adventure. And ultimately that's why I decided to tap out. And I already had some success with my side project. So I was like, all right, there's going to be no better time to start this than right after college. I need the least I'll ever need in my life financially. I have the freedom to go do this now. I don't have kids or anything really tying me down. So why not now? Like, this is the maximum best time for me to start doing this.
Seemed like you were going into it very mindful and very analytic. I think that had the tables been turned, had that been me, I would have just been like, Google, let's go. And then years later I would have been like, did I make the right choice? So very, very, very thoughtful and mindful of you, for sure. What were those early days like when you actually made that decision to not move forward with anything Google related and do your own thing? What were the following, say, like couple years like?
It was a rough beginning. So when we first started, things were not great, right? So we struggled to get customers. That was the first thing. Like, it was really hard to get people to work with you that have never done business with you before. We were also kids, right? We were like 21 years old. So like, we had no credibility. Other than the fact that I built a separate business and my co-founder built a separate business. We didn't have any real credibility in the field that we were marketing our services in. So it was really challenging to get those first couple customers to bet on us. And eventually we did. Eventually we got a few people to take a bet on us. And um, really we started, the first couple of years were just riddled with problems and ignorance that, you know, we didn't know how to position ourselves. We didn't know how to price ourselves. We didn't know what service to offer. I mean, I specifically remember we managed to get this pitch with one of the world's largest coffee chains. And we walk into the meeting with the CEO, pull up the first slide of our pitch deck, which was the jankiest pitch deck I think the world has ever seen. And the CEO looks at it, reads it, looks at us and being like, this meeting is over, and walks out the back door. Like I just
Wow.
remember some of these moments of like, and I think these things happen because I didn't set things up in in a way that actually makes sense. I didn't get help from someone who had already been there before. I just was like, all right, I'm not working at Google. You know, my co-founder, we're gonna go on this adventure together. We're just gonna put something together and sell anything to anyone was like our mission for the first like, you know, couple bits of moments of our agency. And, you know, I think we learned a ton from that first, you know, from that first bite at the apple. And, you know, our service looked a lot different than what it looks like today. You know, we are a very buttoned up machine today, but back then it was riddled with ignorance tax for sure.
So I have to ask, that early on, how did you end up in the room with that CEO? How did that come to be?
I always had a knack of figuring out what my strength was and playing to it, right? So, you know, back then my strength was I am I am young, ambitious, and willing to do whatever it takes to get things done. And I don't have a lot of clients, so my full attention will be on you. And I think that like gumption got in the room. And I think a lot of exchanges of things, right? Like being able to get in the right rooms, exchange of energy. So I've always had, even to this day, I still have like this insane energy inside me to build something amazing. And back then, that energy was a little bit more youthful because I was right out of college. And I think I was able to get into the room with the right people very easily because I was able to play to those strengths. Now, whether I succeeded in that room, well, I did a lot, but sometimes I really didn't because I wasn't presenting the right offer to the person. I didn't have a buttoned up product that I was selling. But I was able to get into the room pretty easily, and still to this day, it's just kind of a knack that I have for being able to find my way into the right rooms.
I mean, that can if you can skip to the front of the line or skip multiple steps that most other people need to take, I think that's definitely a really strong superpower. I want to speak to that idea of that youthful energy, and I think that we can kind of take it for granted when we have it because we don't know any other way. We just know like it's like kind of like naivete. It's just like I'm going to do this, and it's going to be great, it's going to be awesome. And then of course you get some successes and you get a lot of like failures and learnings. I think that one of the best things about that youthful energy is if you can have the foresight. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you can have the foresight to sort of step outside yourself and find somebody else who can be like, okay, you've got the energy that we all wish that we had, but you don't have the focus and you don't know the direction to focus that energy in. So I'm going to tell you to go in this direction. You're going to see shiny objects on the right and to the left, and they're going to seem like good ideas, and you're not going to look at them. You're just going to keep your eyes ahead, and you're just going to keep going forward. At least that's been kind of my experience. Like looking back in hindsight, realizing how much ignorance tax I paid by like being like, no, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to do it myself, and no one else is going to do it. And look back, being like, oh my God, that was like 5 years of stuff that I did not need to do.
Yeah, I agree, and I've definitely been there. I think the first 5 years of my business look a lot different than the last, like the most recent 5 years of my business, and the next 5 years of my business are going to look different. I mean, I more recently started investing in coaching and investing in you know, paying the ignorance tax with dollars versus time. Because one way or another, you're going to have to pay that
Yep.
ignorance tax. Either you're going to have to pay it in time that goes by for you to figure out the problem on your own, or you're going to pay it in dollars from someone that's already paid the ignorance tax. And I think half of the problem too is just being really humble with yourself and knowing that you don't have all of the answers, right? Like, you know, I think knowing that like perhaps maybe like what you're thinking and what the reality of a situation is could be different, and just questioning yourself in those productive ways, I think makes a lot of sense over time.
Yeah. Oh, I love this conversation. So looking back at those first 5 years and then sort of the inflection point, what do you think was the first, maybe not the biggest, but the first main, lever you discovered that when I pull this, I get a different outcome?
So the first one was definitely focus. Focus on one thing, which when we used to have a laundry list of services, and we eventually narrowed those down to really productize our service, which I recommend to any marketing agency. Is like, you need to productize what you have as if you're Amazon, and you need to be able to build your proposals and build your offering as if it's a shopping cart that someone could check out of. Yeah, I know it's a service. I know it's something that you're buying that way. But if you're able to do that, then people are able to grasp onto it as something more tangible than an ambiguous service. So I think the first thing that we did that really changed the game was productizing our service, making it a very clear, simple offer, which for us is video editing for companies. And doing that, going through that productization model really, really, really has helped. Um, there's a process that I went through that I only kind of branded as this later on, which is like the three C's of productization. Um, you know, and I think that has really helped me over time. Build up, you know, build almost a service offering that's productized in nature.
What are the three C's?
Okay, so the first one is clarity. Clarity in what you're offering is the first C. So I think a lot of agencies have lack of clarity in their offering, meaning
In
they're
everything, let's be
offering
honest. The whole thing is
in
just kind of
everything, in
murky.
everything. I'm curious what you've seen too. Like you say, everything is kind of murky. What do you mean by that?
Murky in terms of positioning, and scope of work is a big one, and who we are, how we talk about ourselves, uh, the rubric for how we hire and who comes in and who doesn't. Like it's financials, really, really big one. Everything is
Financials are a
just
big
kind of
one.
like I'll get to it, but not right now. It's just growth. All we focus on is growth.
Yeah, I agree. It's growth at all costs too, and I think the first C for the first thing, which is like the clarity and offering, you need that. You need to know why you're better at that. Um, the second one is a cost structure. So the second one is basically like, you want to have a cost structure that is really simple and easy to understand. I think a lot of agencies make that mistake of only going out and trying to get the most they can out of a client, or trying to give a different price for a different person. Just keep it clean, keep it simple,
Hmm.
keep it something that's on your website that either rejects a client or makes them want to engage more with you. Because at the end of the day, your price tells a story, right? So your price tells a story of you know what uh, it tells a story of like who you're serving. It tells a story of what level of premium service you're offering. And I think that if you price your services in the correct way, it really attracts the right clients. Um, and then the last one is customization. So you want to get rid of customization as much as you
Hmm.
can in an agency. So the third C is that ability for you to have a replicatable service that you could do over and over and over again the same way.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing I was thinking of when you actually first brought up productization, and you kind of laid it out a little bit already in the three C's, is productizing actually forces you to define what the service is. It forces you to say, here are the boundaries, here's as far as it goes, here's the scope, here are the resources that I allocate towards it, here are the resources I don't, here's as far as it goes. And I think that the process of productizing your services at your agency, even if you're not actually going to productize it as an exercise, it shines a light on the fact that, oh, I have no clarity. Everything is kind of ambiguous. One thing that I talk about a lot is I'm big on core values, and one of my core values is ruthless clarity, because I believe that ambiguity is a growth killer, and I think that in this
Yes,
instance, it's proven time and time again that if we don't have clarity, either the client's not going to move forward, or you're not going to move forward, or you're going to lose money, or the client's going to lose money. Either way, it's not going to be a winning engagement.
I agree. I 100% agree. The other thing too is like, there's a couple, obviously the three C's are the main ones, but there's other ones that I will often talk about that are even bigger, which is customer, right? You have to have the right customer as well, right? I talked a little bit about that, the pricing, but if you can narrowly define like who is your customer, like I am only serving the HVAC industry or I am only serving the pest control industry. If you can get down that granular, or even I am only serving customers to do X and Y. Like for us, we're only serving customers that do video editing. In our marketing, typically we market to agencies, we typically market to healthcare companies, and we typically market to lawyers. Um, those are our three main markets. Obviously, if another client comes along the way, that's great. But if you're defined in the customer that you're offering, I think that helps a lot too, because it makes it really easy to just go pull a list of who your customers are, and then you become the best in the industry. And by going narrow, you actually can go deep with those customers, and you become way more valuable to them than anyone
Absolutely.
else.
Absolutely. And if you can become more valuable, it allows you to actually charge more, which allows you to invest more in the service, which makes it even more valuable, and it kind of compounds and just
Yeah,
then that if agencies ever wonder like how did this one agency end up charging, $20,000 a month for a retainer? How does that work? That's how it works, is you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the impact and the ROI for the client gets higher and higher and higher. And the conversation of justifying the fees isn't even really a conversation. It's like, well,
correct.
obviously if I spend $20,000 a month, this is going to be worth, 40, 60, 80, 100, etc. Whatever it ends up being. Um, I love that. What's another lever? Because I feel like you've probably got a lot.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite books is actually this book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Hmm.
And one of the things he teaches in that book is you don't hire to solve a problem in your business. You hire to free up your calendar. And I think the importance of that is something that I got wrong along the sequences of hiring. I basically skipped a step and went all the way to like delivery or tried to hire for leadership before I freed up time on my calendar for stuff that I was doing. Time on my calendar could be, sales stuff. It could be setting meetings. It could be admin tasks. So I think the whole concept is you really want to look at your calendar, audit what you're doing, and take away things that are eating up your time, but not delivering the maximum amount of hourly rate. So I think where I've made an error and in leveraging is wasting some of the most valuable resource I have, which is my time, on things that aren't actually driving the needle forward for my business.
Absolutely. I can completely 100% agree with that. The first time I hired a executive assistant, again, I was kicking myself being like, I should have done this years and years ago. And of course, it's kind of similar to when you make your first hire in general is you're like, I'm trusting this person to do this and not screw it up. But then of course, all that is really doing is illuminating the fact that you don't have things defined and you don't necessarily have a framework, or you don't have systems, or you don't have SOPs. And so guess what? You're going to have to either document them or hands off the wheel, abdicate all responsibility to the person doing it and hope that it works out, which I don't recommend you do. I'd recommend you give somebody at least some kind of playbook.
The beauty of to the EA hire is if you do relinquish control of your inbox and your calendar, that person will be just as informed as you are over time about issues that are coming into your world. And they'll know everything that is happening and can be a second version of you that is just like able to use your inbox as a tool versus something that you're that you're doing just to kill time, right? Answering email is not something you have to do yourself. It used to be something that I thought I had to do myself, and it's not. So I think just looking at your calendar, auditing your time, and gradually rising up the ranks of the most leverageable possible activity that you could be doing every minute of the day is how I like to play the game with my time.
Yeah. Wise words. Do you remember the first hire you made?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I was scared shitless when I made that first hire. It was an intern. And they actually came in. We had an office at the time. They came to work at the office, and we weren't paying them that much money. But I remember like, how are we going to pay this bill every single month? Right? We're barely paying ourselves anything, and we hired this intern to come help us out. Which I said, like, I don't know if it was like the right hire. I still actually know the person to this day. And I don't know if it was the right hire at the time, but it definitely alleviated some of the day-to-day tasks that we were doing. This intern actually took over some of the like delivery mechanisms for a few of our clients. Um, and it helped free up a decent amount of time.
One question I love to ask, similar vein, is when did the agency actually start feeling like an agency? Because in the early days, especially if you sort of start it accidentally, it can kind of feel like just a couple of people doing a bunch of stuff, and you call it an agency. But behind closed doors, you're like, I don't really know what this is exactly. It's an agency. But when did it really feel like an agency?
I think after we got past 15 people, it started to feel like an agency. At 15 people, we had we started to form departments. And once we started to form departments, we started forming like managers and leadership structures and people that report to other people. And I think once we crossed that threshold, it started to feel like more of a machine that
Hmm.
produced work versus a bunch of people doing stuff randomly. And I think like once we crossed that threshold, it started to really feel like an actual business. And and from there, the jump from 15 to 30 people didn't feel like much. It didn't feel like much at all. Like it felt like I woke up and turned around and was like, wow, there's 30 people in our Slack. And then like the jump from 30 to 45 people has felt similar. Like it's like I woke up and I'm like, oh, there's 45 people in our Slack. And like it's it's growing more and more every day. So I think for me it became a thing where there were people, it became an agency when there were people that are responsible for a large function of our delivery mechanism. I think that was the key turning point
That
for
makes a lot of
me.
sense. Okay, two questions. One is a short one, which is how many people are you at currently? And then the second question is you brought up a very key point, which is you had managers. And I think a lot of agencies really screw up with the management layer. So I'd love to hear how you went about actually creating the management layer and identifying, what kinds of people would fit for that and what that looks like.
Um, so today we are at 45 people. They're all awesome. We have a great crew. We're growing probably about 2 to 3 people a month. So we're a pretty fast growing agency. Um, the point that the point about managers. So the way we've structured it is, we have effectively we use like sort of like a jobs to be done model, if you will. If you've ever heard of that, the way it works is like we've kind of listed out all the different jobs, and each manager has a set of things that they're managing, right? So if you look at it, we have at the very top, we have like operations manager and creative director. They're in charge of delivery. The operations manager makes sure the trains run on time. The creative director makes sure that holistically as a whole, everything looks amazing when it gets put out. So like quality of work, trains run on time. Like those are the two functions of our two main managers. Under that, you have delivery managers. We use what's called a pod-based system.
Hmm.
So essentially, that each manager has a pod of people. That each have editors underneath them, and each of those editors um, report into the pod manager, and the pod manager works with the clients to ensure that their delivery happens on time. So essentially, the um, the pod manager acts as quality control, but also acts as a manager to the editors. They're coaching the editors. If the editors are having a bad day, they make sure that the editors are like up to speed. So like the managers like serve increasingly leveraged functions as you go up the org chart, right? So we have the editors or individual contributors. Managers serve as a larger scope of client and manager relations, and then you go up a little higher, and it's you know really governance for the entire organization, of like, this is what X thing should look like. This is how we're going to set up our automations, like that's essentially how it works. So like the higher up you go, the more leverage the manager um, has up the org chart, and the more, scope that the manager has, across the course of the organization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds very well thought out, and I would hazard a guess that this has probably been key to your ability to scale.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
having
And
this
I
sort of
think
like it's almost like a printable structure at this point.
Yeah, and I think the pod-based system is something that other agencies can use too, because essentially you're creating micro P&Ls that roll up to your mass your regular P&L, and you put people and enable people in your organization to run their own effectively business inside your business.
Yes, I love
So,
that.
because you can't possibly, as you scale, and we have probably close to 350 customers. There is no way I could talk to 350 customers every single day, right? Like there's just no way, right? And I'd be doing them a disservice by even attempting it. I would wreck the whole service, right? But each pod can have their clients that they're managing and that they're going after, and that pod essentially is in charge of making sure that work gets delivered on time and make sure that work comes together well. And it really enables you to dream a little bigger too, because I think the really fun part of growing a business is being able to empower people to to essentially have their own dreams that fit inside of your organization. And I think that what I really get inspired by is when I talk to some of my managers and learning about some of their dreams, and right, and being able to enable that through the system we've created. And we actually give them bonuses based on how well their pod is doing on any given quarter, right? So they get essentially they get we kind of give them their quarterly earnings report. We tell them how their pod is doing. We tell them like where they're spending too much money in their pod. And they almost become like extensions of us, really, like of as ownership, because they own their world inside of our business.
That is really, really cool. Was that something that you sort of iterated towards, or how did that come about? Because again, that's that's adding a lot of trust to your people, which I think is also really, really important. Because if you honor people with trust, they usually honor you with buy-in in return, but not always. So how did you come to that level of trust?
I came to that level of trust simply because I wanted to create a system where everyone felt rewarded relative to the work that they were putting in. So, I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of an ESOP, but
Yep.
there was this one client I had very early on, and basically the company's 100% employee owned. And I met with the owner of that business one day, and I asked him, I was like, what works about this? And he told me this amazing story about how he saw one of the employees in the organization driving a forklift around their warehouse and doing donuts with the forklift, and it was tearing up the floor, hurting the forklift. And he stops the employee and says, "What are you doing ruining your forklift?" Which is to say that in a 100% employee owned company, your forklift is the employee's forklift.
Hmm.
So I didn't necessarily want to turn my business into an ESOP. It doesn't work with our model, but I wanted to take that similar principle of ownership and put it into our business. So we came up with this pod-based system where everyone is sort of incentivized to to be and think and act like owners inside of our organization.
Very cool. I love that. I mean, you work with a lot of clients, but you've also been an agency for a while. You're a decent size. What's a notable client win that your team achieved that you're proud about?
I think there was one that we recently put together that it's not a specific client win, but it's a specific technology win. Our philosophy is that humans plus AI equals the future world. And you have to pair great humans with great technology to get the leverage for the future. If you don't want to get eaten by AI, basically, like, you have to embrace AI.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult thing to talk about especially with creatives, because especially folks in our company create with their whole selves, right? They create with passion, they create with a lot of energy, and it's really like an energetic exchange for an editor to like look through footage and find the right moments and make things great. But I was really proud of our team because they came up with a few pieces that were created 100% with AI. So they use their creative brain power combined with the power of AI and technology, and they created really 3 or 4 amazing pieces of AI creative video, which honestly I think we're going to start using more and more with our clients, because it's really the future, and the future is here, and the future is now with AI. And I'm really proud of our team for just embracing that technology, um, and creating something that can work for our clients.
That's really cool. Yeah. One final thing that I want to bring up is the way that we connected is actually I was on a Slack group, which our listeners might be familiar with since it's so massive, called Online Geniuses. And I come to find out that you're actually a partner with Online Geniuses. Could you just kind of walk me through kind of quickly how did Online Geniuses come to be? And also maybe for the people who don't know what it is, what is it?
So Online Genius is one of the largest marketing communities in the world. It's inside of Slack. So it's just like a Slack group where you have 55,000, you know, people in there that are marketing agencies, marketers, digital marketers inside of companies and brands. And it's essentially like your cheat code to being a better digital marketer. Um, you know, great community, great information, and you can meet the most amazing people in the world in there. Um, the community actually started years ago. I was not the original founder of it, um, but I came on pretty early. It was originally a Skype group, and what happened was, a bunch of people got put in this Skype group, and there was so much chatter about marketing in this Skype group that it would kill everyone's phone in a single day. Like you couldn't shut it off.
Yeah.
So everything got switched over to Slack, and eventually it became this Slack group, which has been growing year after year. Um, and I have had the opportunity to become a partner in that over the years, and it really allows marketers to connect with each other and learn about similar issues that they're experiencing in their world. We have channels for everything from AI to just general information to agencies to um, you know marketers inside of companies. So it's a great resource for anyone looking to expand their marketing knowledge.
Absolutely. Marketing knowledge and also just marketing network in general. There's like
Yeah,
55,000 people in there. So, I mean, it's a great place to even ask questions. And then if you're looking for, some one-off help, like, hey, I'm looking to solve this problem, like 10 people will hop on and be like, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And then, of course, that might end up being somebody who's, a part of your team or maybe some extra help that you need
yeah.
whenever things get kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can find vendors in there. You can find people to solve quick ad hoc problems. There's people from all over the world there, so you get different, unique perspectives. There's not really a city that you go to that you can't find someone in OG that is there, so you can use it to like make connections when you travel. So it's great in that way.
Super, super cool. Well, David, this has been an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. Thanks for coming on. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
So I actually want to leave your audience with a gift. So I've hired probably a couple hundred video editors this time, and we decided to put together this guide that shares every single mistake that we've made in hiring video editors, and stuck it together. So if you want to find me and grab that, just find me on Instagram at David Feinman, and just message me guide and Sean, and I will send you over that guide as a gift for Sean's audience and everything he is building here.
Awesome. And we'll also make sure to link that in the show notes as well.
Amazing.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.